Severe crane damage is another brilliant Cheers episode. This one has one of my favourite Frasier moments, and in a way, it could be argued that it's a bit of a character study of Diane as well. This is episode 18 of season 8. It's directed by Andy Ackerman, and as always, there will of course be spoilers from now as I go through the episode chronologically and share some thoughts. Tremendously fun cold open. It involves probably all of the bar patrons. I didn't see anybody who wasn't joining in. It starts off with Norm tapping his pencil on the bar, and then some other people begin to tap, then more people from the pool room come out with cues, and then Woody launches into We Will Rock You. Rebecca comes out of her office, she's dancing, kind of. It's a lot of fun, and probably one of the most fun, high-energy cold opens. Absolutely loved it. We then find out that Cliff has a stress-related rash on his back. It's tough being a mailman, and as he says, you can't even peek in a window anymore without people going crazy on you. And then the cranes come in, and Lilith looks fabulous. Frasier looks good as well. And it turns out that today is publication day for Lilith's new book, Good Girls, Bad Boys. Apparently that title was her editor's choice. Lilith wanted to call it a cross-sectional study of control group females with a tendency towards self-destruction vis-a-vis damaging relationships with members of the opposite sex. And Carla sums it up with the following quote: "So what you're saying is that once guys like Sammy are done sucking the juice out of babes, they can toss the shriveled husks to guys like Frasier." And my first thought was, yep, that's basically what happened with Diane, kind of. And from that point on, I did a lot of thinking about Diane, which, to be fair, I usually do. And then Diane does get a mention later on, so we'll come back to that in a little bit. Frasier then convinces Sam to go with him to the TV studio for the live show. And then Norm reads out the side effects on the pill bottle for the pills that Cliff is taking for his back. And one of the side effects is breast enlargement. And Frasier says, and I don't love this, Frasier says, and I quote, "You'd have to take 5 times the prescribed amount in order to experience that side effect." Maybe not the most responsible thing to say, because that's not something that's going to be proven for everybody. That side effect could happen with a smaller amount. So I don't love that. I think it's a little bit irresponsible. But at the same time, I don't actually think anybody is going to come to harm because of what Frasier said. I am overthinking it, but I certainly didn't love it. And that's what I'm here for. I'm here to dissect absolutely everything anyway. We then cut to the TV show. Gorgeous set design. Love the costume that the host is wearing. The host is called Brenda. She's played by Phyllis Katz. The book cover for Lilith's book, we see it very briefly. Kind of dull, but it works well enough. And then they end up directing attention to Frasier, who is sitting, as Lilith put it, with his hands folded neatly in his lap. Sam, beside him, is manspreading, clearly a lot more confident in his own presence than Frasier is, and they both end up getting invited up on stage with Lilith. And the host, Brenda, asks Sam what a date would be like with Sam. He can't say, so he whispers it to her. And then Frasier is happy to talk about his jolly good fun date. And there are obviously stark contrasts here between both, which is kind of the whole point of the bad boys versus the good boys. And then we have a discussion that I thought was really interesting, and Frasier says, and I quote, "I used to date, actually, an old girlfriend of Sam's." And the host responds, "So she preferred you to Sam?" And Frasier's response is, "Oh yes. Well, that is until she broke up with me and got engaged to Sam. You know, I'd like to add in my defense, the woman was nuts." Which I love and I hate. I love any mention of Diane. It gives me a chance to talk about Diane. But I don't like the fact that Frasier does frequently refer to her as being nuts, especially given his profession. Somebody in his profession should not be using that terminology, even if it's about a former girlfriend of his. But I can understand why he would feel that way. And of course, it does make me think about Diane. Did Diane see Frasier as a safer option after everything she went through with Sam? Let's remember why she met Frasier. Because she had a nervous breakdown after everything that happened in the episodes before that, and Frasier would have seemed like a safer option, a more sensible option. I don't necessarily think he was a rebound option that became more long-term. I do think that something in Diane said, well, Sam got me to where I am now, and Frasier is the safer alternative, and he's comforting, he's a nice person, he's intellectual. There are elements of Frasier that Diane absolutely would have been drawn to, and I do think that it's because of Sam that she then turned to Frasier, somebody who is the exact opposite of Sam in many, many ways. So I guess Frasier ultimately has Sam to thank for everything that happened with Diane. And then the host asks the audience who'd like to sleep with Frasier or Sam, and they applaud who'd like to sleep with Sam, who'd like to sleep with Frasier, very much objectifying them. It's not the best look, but it's entertaining enough. And then before we know it, Lilith's basically on top of Sam, and it was a very, very weird direction for things to take. But I guess it does help to highlight that there's not necessarily a black and white. The good girl, if you like, might not always be attracted to the bad boy. She might like the Frasier of the scenario, but there's still that attraction to the Sam character, and I think it helps to show that it's maybe not always black and white. So it served a purpose, but it felt a little bit random. We're then back at the bar sometime after the talk show. Women are all over Sam, and I don't like this side of Sam. It is just a brief scene. It's not too in-depth, but he's not great in that moment. It's very much early season 1, season 2 Sam. Frasier is sulking. He asks Rebecca if he is a good boy. She says some nice reassuring things, but does kind of accidentally refer to him as ratty house slippers. That's the straw that broke the camel's back for Frasier. And this is one of my favourite Frasier moments. I love it so much. I will watch it independently again and again. He stands up and he asks, "Would a good boy do this?" And he starts running around the bar, holding scissors in the air, declaring, "I am running with scissors." Yes, the physical comedy is there. It's very, very funny to see Kelsey Grammer just running around the bar, everybody completely baffled by what's going on with these scissors aloft. But it's the fact that he declared it, the "I am running with scissors," it just absolutely floors me every time I see it. It is one of those moments that can cheer me up no matter what mood I'm in. It's just perfect. Probably some of the best 5-10 seconds of Cheers ever. It's just absolutely fabulous. Cliff then comes in, more banter about mailmen. Cliff then claims that Norm was looking at his chest, obviously very paranoid about this potential side effect. Carla pretends that Jane Russell's on the phone, and then Rebecca walks up to the bar. She stands between Norm and Cliff, and she says, "Why does Cliff always have to be the butt of our stupid jokes?" And it felt like a bit of a rhetorical question, because there are obvious reasons why he is the butt of the jokes. But then she turns it around, makes a joke at his expense. Yep, I think the pacing there was pretty good. The joke was building up a little bit, and it landed much more powerfully than it would have done if Rebecca had just made the joke outright, making it seem like she was on Cliff's side and then delivering the punchline. It was very, very effective, very, very well done. We don't get that much Rebecca in this. She doesn't have that many lines in this episode, which is fair enough. We had a lot of Rebecca-focused episodes recently, but what we got was certainly very enjoyable. Lilith then comes in panicked, looking for Frasier. She's clearly remorseful for the way she acted on the show, and she goes to the office to use Rebecca's phone to phone the emergency rooms to try and find Frasier. And then we hear the rumble of a motorcycle. On this motorcycle, we see it driving down the steps, and in walks Frasier, dressed in leather. Behind him is a character he refers to as Viper. She's played by Lorelle Brina. And, well, Frasier decided he was going to be a bad boy, ended up on the back of a motorcycle. And it's a very strange moment. It's nice to see Frasier in different attire. It's kind of like an alternate universe. It's good fun to see. And I probably wouldn't have picked up on this, but I read it on IMDb. When they put the motorcycle helmets on the bar, you can see the reflection of the studio lights, just breaking that fourth wall a little bit. It's good fun. It's not an issue. It's not tremendously obvious, at least I don't think it is, but I rather enjoyed it. So thank you to whoever added it to IMDb, because I had a lot of fun with it. Frasier then realises that this isn't who he is, and this isn't who he wants to be. So he says some really great things to Viper. We have a nice little monologue, and he says, ultimately, and I quote, "If these things be dull, then may I be the dullest man who ever lived." And Lilith, having come out from Rebecca's office, declares, "You are Frasier, you are," which in a sense is an insult, but in the moment, it was a really beautiful, beautiful moment, a lovely way for Lilith to respond to the situation, and all's well that ends well. Well, not necessarily. I don't like the ending. That scene itself was good and it was relatively funny. It's not a bad ending to the episode and it wraps up the story with Lilith and Frasier nicely. But Cliff's story feels incomplete. Now, it's just padding. It's just a small subplot. It's not a big deal. But I was left needing more from Cliff. And what I would have liked to have seen is Cliff turning things back around. I haven't fully worked out how I would want this to play out, but I'd like Cliff to gain control of the situation, to maybe make a joke of himself for potentially developing breasts, just for him to regain a little bit control there, and for us to get a bit of a conclusion there, for Cliff to ultimately realise, well, if it happens, it happens. It's a temporary side effect. It's no big deal. At least I assume it would be temporary. I'd hope for Cliff's sake it would be temporary. But either way, there is something that Cliff could have done to deliver comedy, regain control of the situation, and to wrap his part of the narrative up. Again, it is just a small subplot. It's not the biggest issue that it never felt like it had a satisfying conclusion, but I was left feeling like that part of the story was unfinished. But the actual final scene, the final moment, in itself is good, but I would have liked to have seen something a little bit more with Cliff there. But other than that, it's a fabulous episode, as usually the case. Plenty of time to think about Diane. I think it is really interesting to look at Diane and just assess why she is drawn to Sam. This is something that I love so much, and there are multiple theories. There are many reasons why she could be drawn to Sam, and I don't think there's a single black and white answer. That being said, the show writers might have it in their mind. This is why Diane is attracted to Sam. This is what we're going to use to build stories around. So there could be an answer in theory, but I don't think that there is a specific reason why. I think there are maybe multiple reasons, and all of those elements work together, sometimes positively, and often, as we've seen, quite negatively. Whereas I do think it's, in my opinion, a bit more obvious why Diane was attracted to Frasier. He was a safer option. He was the opposite of Sam, which is what she needed in the moment. And I think he matched her intellectually, which in the moment, on the surface level, was what she needed. But long term, yeah, I think it would cause a lot of problems. She's very competitive, and I love her, but she's maybe not as highbrow as she thinks she is. And I would argue that Frasier is a lot more highbrow than Diane, and long term she wouldn't like that. It is my opinion that Diane has to be the most intellectual, the most cultured in the relationship, and Frasier would challenge that too much, whereas Sam doesn't challenge that. And I think that that is what Diane needs to feel secure within herself. So I have many theories, many thoughts, and certainly this episode brings about a lot of those discussions. I'd love to know what you think on Sam and Diane, Sam and Frasier, and whether you have a preference. For me, my preference will always be Sam and Diane. This episode allowed me to think a lot about that, and for the most part, in fact, apart from not feeling that satisfied with Cliff's story or how it concluded, Severe Crane Damage is still a fabulous episode of Cheers.